Yes, that's it, Stu.
I'm willing to justify it that way.
Last night we taped tonight's show with a studio audience, and they were an audience that was watching last night's broadcast in another studio here, and then they came in afterwards, and we taped the show for tonight, and there were all questions about what'd you think, because they watched all week, and we were just talking about how Stu wasn't really widely received in his comedic.
That is not a fair analysis.
Surprise. You watched tonight, and they were so he was just trying to explain to Stu that maybe they were just very far away because the people right in front were laughing. And I explained, Have you ever been to a comedy club before where you're close? The last thing you do is sit close to the comedian, because when they're not funny, you're like, I feel so bad for you. Ha 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 ha. And you try to show them that I love you and you're okay. And it's you really don't have a lot of talent, but you shouldn't be on stage.
So that's what the audience was doing for Stu last night?
That's the way I interpreted it.
Wait a minute. You were laughing. How could you have interpreted it that way? You laughed at the jokes.
I was closer than the audience was.
It was interesting.
So it was a mercy laugh.
No, he was really funny last night. He was kind of hosting and moving things forward, and so he was really funny last night. And I laughed really hard at a couple of things, and I'm like, either I am sorely misguided on Stu's funniness.
It's weird because our audience typically does pretty well with the really serious into comedy type stuff. Mm-hmm. That's the way this show was built. I mean, Glenn sobbing and then 3 minutes later is making you laugh
2 seconds
hard.
Sometimes later. Laughing hard.
And that's the way maybe not everyone.
Yeah, they were really serious last night. They were really, really serious.
Well, you were presenting a vision of how to make America, to restore America, and it was a serious message. I just can't resist also trashing you in the middle of that message, and maybe not everybody liked.
Yeah, they were really. It was funny. We said there was about 50 people in the audience, and I started out with saying who was confused this week, and about 6 people raised their hand, and then Stu said. And I asked them, what were you confused by? What was it? And one lady, what was it? Who was it? Was it on the air or off the air that somebody said, I don't understand how do you, what are you doing on, politics today?
Yeah. It was one of the questions.
And kind of, had to go into, we are not abandoning all of the things that we do, and we're building a news network. And quite honestly, that's what FreedomWorks. That's why I've partnered with FreedomWorks so hard. And I have to tell you, knowing the guys at FreedomWorks, GOP, you better stop screwing around. You better stop screwing around, because if you think that FreedomWorks is dangerous to you now, you keep screwing with them. They'll just go shut down FreedomWorks and go open up something else. They'll just call it Freedom Really Works now. Just stop screwing with them. Stop screwing with them. They're going to win in the end, because they are not playing politics. You are. They're not. Anyway, sorry, that was a personal message to about 14 GOP people on Capitol Hill. I apologize. I should have just sent them a note. But
that's still an important part of what we do.
It's a really important part.
But on the other hand, as to the question, what are you doing on politics? Well, what did we do on politics the last 5 years? Did it work?
And you know what?
No.
But you know what?
It didn't.
But you know what did work? The educating, telling the stories of America that nobody knew. We didn't know about progressivism. We didn't know about Bernays. We didn't know about...
And all these things are important.
All of these things.
And it built a foundation for what you're doing now.
Correct. If we didn't know those things, we'd be far worse off than we are. Far worse off than we are. And those things are important to tell. Now, I just happen to believe that the way I feel is that we have to do what we were sent here to do. And not all of us were sent here to do We can't gobble up our entire life in Washington and politics. We can't. Somebody, do you want the guys who were sent here to do fracking? Do you want them to spend all of their time, campaigning and doing other things? No, they have to pay attention to it. And when it's their time to step in with a check or something else, they should step in and do it. But they shouldn't be spending all of their time. They have something they're supposed to create and build. And so do you. And what we're doing is, at least, and maybe it's just me, and Pat will tell you that the probably the biggest struggle in my entire life is fatherhood. It is, for me, the hardest thing I have struggled with my entire life. And someday we'll have a in-depth conversation on that. But I have a very difficult time with that. It plays on me hard. If Satan ever wants to screw with me, that's how he screws with me. And it has really come to play, really starting on election night. Because I thought to myself, I have missed the really important years of my children's life, in all of my children's life, because we were building something really important. And what we were building was a defense to wake people up so we could save our country. And then it didn't happen. And now I'm like, I was in bed last night with my wife. It must have been 12:15, and we were talking about the kids. And I said, honey, there's not too many years left. There's just not too many years left. And then Rafe and Cheyenne are 10 and 12, and they're, and then they turn into monsters, and and then we got the monster period, and then they turn back nice again, but they're about to turn into monsters and eat us. And every second is precious. And as I said to her last night, eternal consequences, because it's not us that is going to be fighting this. It is our children, and they're already on the front line. And if we don't concentrate on them, if we're not putting everything we have on them to prepare them for the battle that is coming, and I don't mean that as, I'm not even going to explain that. If we don't prepare them and give them the spiritual armor and the intellectual firepower, they're doomed. They're doomed. And I just think, I feel with everything in me, and I've been saying it before the election, at least internally, I feel strongly that it is time to pull back, gather. I've been saying this even with our troops, and I've been making the analogy that it's the same thing in our troops that I feel in our country. We are spread too thin. Pull back, rest, gather, strengthen each other, restock, because the real battle is coming. And you're not going to, we just lost a battle. The war is still raging. And if you think that we can continue to fight all of these fights, those who need to be in the battle right now, we have to support and let them fight the battle. We have got to rest and reload and prepare ourselves spiritually and intellectually, also temporally. Rest your resources. Pull in